Hello, this is Rick Stahl, president of Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, saying hello again. Another edition of Corby Connections. Tonight we have a special guest, MaryAnn Phillips, service area manager for Soldiers Angels in Germany. But before we get to her, as usual, I'm going to bring in our director and host, Pat Cawley. Pat?
MaryAnn, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start with the mantra of Soldiers Angels, which goes like this: may no soldier go unloved. May no soldier walk alone. May no soldier be forgotten until they all come home. And I know that you probably don't want us to shine a light on you as a person, but rather on the organization, and we will allow you to tell the story of the organization. But I really believe in my research of what I know about you, that you have made that mantra a part of your personal mission. And I wanted to ask you first, how did you become involved with Soldiers Angels?
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm thrilled to meet all of you and to participate. I think it might go back even to 9/11. I think, like a lot of people, it made me think a little bit about what it meant to be an American. And a couple of years after that, when the war in Iraq started, of course, we were already in Afghanistan at that point. And being someone who's living in Germany, I found out about the organization Soldiers Angels, whose primary mission at that time was supporting deployed soldiers. And I found out about the military hospital in Germany, so I contacted the founder of the organization and I asked if there was anything I could do. Our founder, who has left the organization, she retired several years ago. Her name was Patty Patton Bader, and she is actually from a military family. Her great uncle is General George Patton, in fact. So along the lines of kind of General George Patton, she was like, just go up there and ask them what they need. Was not as easy as a civilian getting onto a military base in Germany, where there's a hospital, where you have, security with wounded soldiers arriving. But I basically did just that. I think if you go into an organization and keep your eyes open and look around, you see what's being provided, and then you try to find the little gaps where maybe you can add something that I think getting things or getting attention from outside of the military is very important for service members. So to know they're getting the best medical care, they're getting the best of everything, but to know that people back home know that they're there, know what's going on, and are thinking of them and want to show that they're thinking of them, that's a huge part of what we do. And it's, from all accounts, from the medical personnel at the hospital and the support personnel, it makes a difference in the recovery process for these service members to know that people care about them.
I'm sure it does. And from that humble beginning of just looking for how you as an American can contribute and do something for people who are on the front lines of a conflict, I just want our viewers to know where it took you eventually. And I don't mean to make you blush or anything, but in 2010, President Obama awarded you the second highest honor a civilian can receive. That's the Presidential Citizen Medal. And that was for your self-sacrificing service to wounded soldiers and their families at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. And, we can get into what Soldiers Angels does in sort of, I believe, 4 categories. So help for the wounded soldiers, help for just soldiers while they're deployed, help for veterans, and help for the families of the service members. But so much of your work leading from where are the gaps, where can we show support for these soldiers, leading up to getting such an incredibly important honor from the President of the United States. You, I think, dedicated an awful lot of time to that first category, the support of the wounded. So can you tell me what that aspect of Soldiers Angels is all about?
Again, keeping your eyes open and seeing where the need was. And particularly in the beginning, we had the war in Iraq was not over within a couple of months. And soldiers kept coming in through Landstuhl, which what happens is if someone's hurt, they get treated on the scene, they get taken to the next hospital, like a field hospital, and then if they need further care, they're sent on to Germany where they are further treated and then either return to duty or go on to the States for further treatment. So there's a small gap of time where the family doesn't know too much exactly what's going on. So as hard as the Army, works on communications, and they're all, the rear detachment back home is calling the parents or the spouses, there's something about having someone who's not part of the Army and not part of the system who, again, because I was just around and doing what I could, bringing blankets or clothing or something, where I knew the nurses, I knew the staff there. So after helping a few people, I don't know, my name got around, and I must have been on the bulletin boards of, Army moms and Marine Corps moms, and because I would get emails out of the blue from strange people saying, so-and-so said you could help me, my son's on the way to Landstuhl. And I quickly learned that the best thing I could do was say, give me your phone number. And I called them. And I would just talk to them about what generally happens. I don't go into any medical information, but I can tell them what the medevac process entails. And then I ask them, I tell them, well, he's not here yet. Please give me, identifying information so I can track him, and just try to guide them through the process until the person was actually at Landstuhl, because there could be a blackout. Someone spending, hours waiting for a plane, and then on a plane for 12 hours, say from Afghanistan. This is an eternity for a parent or a spouse who has been told, someone is hurt and they're on the way to Germany. That can only mean something bad. Often it isn't. So this is where just having someone to talk to who is not part of the system, I think that people were able to maybe be a little bit more emotional than they might be with the authorities. And, I'm just saying, well, I'll stand in for you if you want. I don't always have to get involved. Not everybody is the same. Not every family member is the same. But if I can talk to them until the service member gets to Germany, and if they're able to get on the phone with their family, then everything's fine. As soon as they can talk to them, everything's fine. But in some cases, with the most severely wounded, they will not be able to talk on the phone. And that is, of course, a situation where, I could say, he's arriving tonight. If you want, I will go and meet the bus, and I will call you the second I see him unloaded into the ICU. So just so I could call, and they said, no matter what time it is, I'm calling people at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, because of the time difference. And I could say, I just saw him, he's here. I'll stay upstairs until I can grab one of the doctors to give you a call so you can finally get firsthand medical information from a person who's actually just operated on him or seen him or examined him. So just holding people over through like step by step and not having it be open-ended. He's hurt, we'll contact you when we know more. Well, that's not enough for some people. Like I said, everyone's different. So I was able to say, okay, he's on the plane. And then I'd call back, he'll be here in 3 hours. I'll call you as soon as I see him. And then, okay, I talked to a doctor, he'll be calling you soon. Just to hold people over, I think, was for some people something very valuable for them.
There's a famous line from a Pennsylvania native, Mr. Fred Rogers, who said, look for the helpers. And when you started this conversation, you said it all started with looking for the gaps where you could do something to help. I would say that a pretty good sign that you found those gaps is that you started getting all these calls from people you don't know, because you were providing a real service. And just in that explanation, I was thinking of my own mother and how she would respond if she just got news that I was going, there had been something happened and I had to go to some medical treatment somewhere, and then knew nothing for, who knows how long, and how maddening that would be for a parent. So, and I had read in another interview of you where the word stand-in was used as you used it. In fact, it called you a stand-in mom. And there was a story of a badly injured soldier in the ICU, and he was unable to, that soldier, I assume it was a he, was unable to communicate, but you held the soldier's hand while you were on the phone with that soldier's mother, and you even held the phone up to that soldier's ear so that the mother could say goodnight to her son. And that's really touching. Can you tell me more about that incident?
I should mention too that the staff at Landstuhl are doting on these people, and most of them are military, and there is a certain, as you know, code of honor and brotherhood amongst these people. So I don't want to make it look like they wouldn't do that, because they do.
Of course.
You will see an ICU nurse who's like working with all these machines trying to keep somebody alive, but then taking the time to say, oh, here, someone just brought you a blanket, talking to someone who's not conscious, explaining, maybe reading the card off the blanket that I had dropped off for the person. So one of the most touching things is to see how these people care for each other amongst the military. But yes, there are cases where just because of that initial phone call, sometimes you develop a chemistry with a spouse or a mom, and all of a sudden you're kind of their lifeline, and in that case, I'll do it. I'll say, if you want, I'll sit with them all night, and I've spent hours just sitting there on the phone with a mom or a spouse that I never met. I don't know what we would talk about, but we'd talk for hours and hours, and I'd get on the phone and say, okay, I'm sitting right next to your guy right now, and how you doing? And we would just talk, and then at the end I'd say, hey, I'll put him on for a few minutes, put him on for you to say goodnight, and that's how we would, end the visit. There were cases where the family was headed over because it was a discontinue of care situation, as we call it. It's an end-of-life situation, and deeply personal, of course, and had developed the rapport with the family before they came over. And I said, if you want, I will sit with him until you get here. And they said yes. And I spent, that whole day and all that night until the next day. And, I told them I'd stay with him, and I stayed with him until they got there.
That, it's impossible to know for sure or measure the impact of everything you just described and that kind of service to a family, but you have to know in your heart that you have provided comfort and reassurance to families out there that is just very impactful to them. I mean, that they went through that experience with that, with that kind of help. It just must make you feel really good.
It's the worst time of their lives. So I think just being able to read the cues and just offer and see if they want me, I'd always say, would you like me to stay with him? Would you like, and of course, in a situation like that, many people, yes, they feel a little bit closer, even though I'm a stranger. It does help some people. So
there must be a feeling like they've lost control, where they would love to have some control to provide some comfort to their loved one. And even though they don't know you, they're given that sense that, well, someone is with my loved one. They're not gravely injured or even dying, as you just described, by themselves. And so, it alleviates that loss of control a little bit.
And I think the type of things I was able to explain to them about the hospital setting, which made them picture, especially in an intensive care situation, I would tell them, your loved one is never alone. Each patient has his own nurse who is sitting right there all the time. Describing perhaps the night before the person gets sent home. What do they look like? in terms of the equipment involved. People, yes, they know, they've talked to the doctors and the nurses, they know the injuries. But I've had one mom tell me that she would have been nowhere near prepared to actually see the machines and everything. And so I think that has saved some people the shock of the initial seeing their person when they did, meet up stateside.
Sure. And so it sounds like you have been there for the soldiers themselves or the airmen or Marines and their families through everything from maybe minor injuries and just being the conveyor of information up to an end of life situation where that soldier or Marine or airman is going to die, and you've helped to prepare, along with all of the dedicated medical staff there with the military, you've helped to prepare the family for that.
I'm thinking of one situation, as I mentioned before, where I stayed all day and all night and all the next day until they got there. And I had said to the chaplain who was responsible for the patient, I said, well, I'm just staying here till they get here, and because I promised them, but then I'm going to fade into the background. Well, then when the family got there, the chaplain kept waving me over, and he said, I said, well, I'm just going to stay in the background. And he goes, well, stay in the background right here. And it was, like I say, sometimes the chemistry is such that when they see me, and I said, I'm the one you've been talking to, that, it's like we've known each other for, like, part of the family. People fall into your arms crying, so it's very emotional, but there's so much support there amongst the staff and so forth, that, and there were many times where I felt I would like to withdraw because this is a personal situation, but someone would give me a signal, or I just knew that the family, that, someone was like grabbing my hand, at that point. So I was not gonna, like walk away. Someone's grasping onto you. But to get back to what you initially just mentioned, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the number of patients who are not in a situation like this. Because in any situation, when you have a lot of people deployed, most of the people getting medevaced, in fact, are not going to be the dramatic intensive care situation. And these are people who might have a minor injury, a simple gunshot wound. It could be that someone is diagnosed with cancer or something, which obviously can't be treated in Afghanistan. It could be a wide range of illnesses or injuries. And these people are staying in barracks, in a group. They don't know anybody. They've been ripped out of the group they've been with for 6 months or a year. They don't know what's going on. They're in a foreign country. It's a scary situation. And being around those barracks was kind of another mom situation. We would go to the commissary and buy white bread and peanut butter and jelly and gallons of milk. And the guys knew that was there, and that was a little touch of home for them, a little touch of normalcy to make a PB&J. And sometimes we'd make cookies in the kitchen. And, these young guys, wearing like shorts and a t-shirt would show up, rubbing their eyes, saying, I was sleeping and I dreamed that I smelled cookies, and so, I think offering them the idea that someone knows they're there, someone, is making sure that they feel as comfortable as they can, and making sure that they had a nice homemade blanket or some clothing. People are often medevac very quickly, can't take things with them. So maybe they have their uniform and a spare uniform in their rucksack, but they don't have like sweats or sleep pants to just lay in bed and lounge and chill out. So I think our effect of our volunteers just around the barracks, just being there and making it a little bit more homey, and representing, each time lots of times people would look at the shelves of donations we had and they go, where's all this stuff come from? And I'd say, well, there's a lot of people back home that know that you are here and they care about you. And it's not about the stuff. The stuff is kind of a vehicle just to show the love and support of your fellow Americans back home. So I wanted to mention the wide range of patients because, like I said, it's actually in any wartime situation, half of the people being medevaced will be for a non-combat situation, in fact. you're gone for a year and you're in a third world country, you never know what you could, what could come up. So,
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you said that. And it's sort of a nice segue into all of the broad range of services that Soldiers Angels provides, because a lot of it goes to that boosting of morale and just a show of love from home and a show of appreciation. And I guess I should note that, anybody watching this is likely to have some connection with the University of Notre Dame, which has, I think, the largest ROTC program in the country, if not the largest, one of the largest. We have our own mantra, and it's inscribed on a door going into Sacred Heart Church on the campus, and it is God, Country, Notre Dame. So if that's our order of loyalty, then
right.
I would say that you have an audience here that is very interested in the broad array of support that you provide to military service members and veterans and their families. So we've talked now about people coming into a hospital setting. Maybe they've been injured, maybe gravely so. But there are other levels of support that Soldiers Angels is involved with. So there's just simple support to anyone who's deployed in the form of letter writing and care packages with baked goods, supporting the chaplains. So can you tell me about those services?
There's a team for everybody. If you like to write letters, you can write letters. If you like to send care packages. The focus of our support over the years has shifted. We have fewer people deployed right now, but they do need support because it's not in the news every night. So that type of support is still needed. Getting a care package, getting a card, knowing that someone says, "Yo, you're still in Afghanistan, or you're in Syria, or you're on the Horn of Africa." People don't know we have special forces troops in North Africa, Horn of Africa. We have guys on ships all throughout the Gulf that might be, that are deployed, but might be medevaced, for example, to Landstuhl if the need arises. So just knowing, I think on ships, it's a huge thing. Mail call is always a big thing if you're deployed. So those are very much appreciated. And in recent years, we have been focusing increasingly, well, I say in recent years, I'd say about 7, 8 years now, to veterans. Some of the people in VA hospitals are from the current conflict, but some are older, as we know, and Soldiers Angels has always been dedicated to supporting veterans of all wars. There are some who dedicate just to the current conflict, but there are programs in VA hospitals. I think we're in, I don't know, 100 or more VA hospitals scattered throughout the country, doing well, right now with the virus, it's difficult, but social visits, bringing blankets, putting together luncheons, different types of activities for our veterans. And then sadly, one of our biggest needs at the moment is food support this is outside of the hospital setting, for veterans who may or may not have been wounded, but have fallen upon hard times currently. Some are homeless. And we do mobile food distributions in about 6 cities throughout the US once a month, where people can pick up groceries that we provide. We provide box lunches to VAs, because when people come in, some of them even, let's say again, underserved, homeless, may go to a VA hospital for treatment, and we provide these box lunches so they have a decent meal. So right now, sadly, and largely because of the virus, there's a large need for food support among our veterans community.
That's really hard to hear, because, a part of my day job is helping older people. Well, most of my clients are older people, and a significant number of them are veterans. And I find they just don't know the range of benefits that are available to them because of their service. They earned these benefits and they just don't know about it. And then you find out about people who are struggling. Probably there's some connection to their service, why they're struggling. There's often long-standing mental health fallout and so forth. So to hear that there are people who have to come in to a VA center for boxed lunches or for food is very hard to hear, but it's an opportunity. And I think that's probably how you see it, because that's how you've described all of this, is looking for where you can fill a hole, fill that void. And so I'm glad you mentioned that. And I read something about the sewing and crafting volunteers who make blankets and homemade items, just to sort of give that tender, loving care of, the feeling of being home
The blankets are a huge thing. Inland stool, people will, if someone's ambulatory and they go to our donation shelves, and I'll see them walking away with, maybe a sweatshirt, and a toothbrush, and then a rolled up blanket under their arm. Everybody wants a blanket. They're made by people back home. They have a little tag on them for the most part saying, best wishes. There are people who are gravely injured in the hospital who that blanket was, I remember talking to one Marine who got one of our blankets actually in Iraq, in Fallujah. And I gave him another one, but he goes, I'm going to keep that one because that was my first blanket. It's been with me since the beginning. So it sounds silly, but people develop a little bit of an emotional attachment. And I've heard from people who years later say, and now it's on our baby's crib. And as a reminder, of things that people did for us and how people were thinking of us. So yes, homemade items, blankets and so forth, huge among the older veterans as well. In some cases, people make the smaller lap blankets for people who are in wheelchairs. But can you imagine laying there, and maybe you've been there for a long time, and then somebody comes in and says, here's a blanket somebody made for you. It's a big thing for some people. Yeah, for a lot of people.
It's a huge show. It's a showing not only of comfort, but it's a showing of you haven't been forgotten and people are thinking about you. I want to be respectful of your time, but I did want to mention too what Soldiers Angels does for the families. And I read about a program you have for military wives who might be at home and they're expecting babies, or
yes.
there are the support you provide when a service member has been lost, and so there are people left behind. There are supports provided there as well.
Yes, and it takes a special type of person to be able to maybe write the right type of card to a service member's family, or to reach out to a service member's family. There are occasions where, as you mentioned, baby showers, if someone's having a baby while their husband's not even around. Of course, the military community pulls together, but it's also nice to know that strangers, are also thinking of you, and that you're alone at home and you're having a baby, and there's people that know that and care.
Right.
So these are the range of things, again, looking around and seeing where the needs are. Yes, I think that if you keep your eyes open, and you mentioned look for the helpers. I have to say that one of the most impressive things to me, or what has stuck with me almost the most throughout this experience, is all the people helping. And it's not, it starts at the military hospital. It starts at, the doctors and the nurses and and everyone there, and the chaplains. But then there's the organizations like Soldiers Angels, and then there's all the people like you guys who help us fulfill our mission to help them. And I often say I've seen the worst and the best of what mankind can do to itself. And if you see, the worst, people killing each other and hurting each other in war, but on the opposite side, there's this, like, all these people every day when I would get an email, our women's club would like to make blankets. I mean, these people just find you. They just show up. It's like God will provide, something. I get low on something and I get an email. We're sending you 100 tubes of toothpaste. And just to think of these people all over pulling together to do this, to me, it far outweighs the bad. And I know that's probably kind of, hard to imagine. But it's interesting living in Germany. it's a very American thing to volunteer and service organizations. And some of my German friends, when, you know, I'm doing this, and they'd be like, well, you mean just strange people just send stuff? And I'm like, yeah, strange people just send stuff. And it was so alien to them. It made me realize again, you know, what is so unique about America and our feeling of service to others and sacrificing for others and not letting just the government take care of it or someone else, wanting to be personally involved. That really, you know, is another thing that sets America apart from the rest of the world.
What a powerful observation. And you mentioned that I think throughout all of this conversation that there's a need for donation of actual items. There's a need for people who have a particular skill, whether it's craft making or sewing.
Correct.
For people to write letters. So where can people watching this interview go to figure out what they can do with if they have the time, if they have a particular skill, or if they can donate? Where can they go to figure out how they can do that?
They can go to Soldiers Angels, written together.org, and there's so many different programs, so there's something for everybody. And like, as you said, the range of items or the range of ways to help are from people who want to write a letter, people who want to write a check, people who want to make a blanket, people who want to send items. There's something for everybody who wants to contribute.
That's wonderful. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And I am going to ask Rick, our president, to join us again. But I wanted to thank you for your time and for explaining all of the work that your organization is doing. And thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, and it was nice meeting you. And thank you for all your support. It's I would be remiss not to mention all of the good that your organization has been able to do through us with your donations. You've clothed and many hundreds of service members who were in Germany and made them realize that people back home care about them and support them.
Okay. Thank you very much, MaryAnn. On the behalf of the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, I want to thank you for your time and your great stories. And it just reinforces the Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg and its commitment to Soldiers Angels. And as long as we can do it, we'll be here to stand behind you and your organization. Thank you very much. On that note, at this time, we're running a monetary donation which will run from August 1st to September 30th. So any of our viewers that are interested in sending us money to help the Soldiers Angels, you can write a check to Notre Dame Club of Gettysburg, P.O. Box 82, Macherrystown, Pennsylvania, 17344, and just mark it Soldiers Angels, and we will make sure that you get the money. MaryAnn, thank you very much, and Pat, thank you very much. And as usual, go Irish.
Thank you.